Ma'am, I appreciate you.
Ready to go. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to join us for this webinar. My name is Michelle Sarju, and I'm the Program Manager for the Community-Based Parenting and Peer Support Strategy of Best Starts for Kids. I will be your facilitator for this webinar today. Also joining me today will be my data and evaluation colleague, Sarah J. Sanford, who will be presenting later in this webinar. I also have my colleagues Erin Murphy of Communications, Hannah Johnson of Communications, and Chris Diabro of Contracts. This webinar is being conducted to provide you more information about the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn RFP. Our agenda for the afternoon is to give you a very high-level BSK overview of the prenatal to 5 work. We will cover our approach on equity and social justice. I will highlight the funding opportunities in the community-based parenting and peer support strategy. I will provide more on this later in this presentation. And then we will have a data and evaluation presentation. We will talk about how you stay connected. And at the very end, we will have time for your questions. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be available as a resource for you later on. If you're going to join us by phone today, we will unmute you after the presentation so that you can ask your questions. As I said earlier, we'll be answering questions at the end of this presentation. BSK, what is it? It's a simple yet the most comprehensive approach of its kind in the nation. It is a child development approach. What we like to see through Best Starts for Kids is more babies born healthy, more kids thriving, and more young people growing up to be happy, successful adults. How we do it? We do it through a strategy of promotion, prevention, early intervention, policy, and systems change. Promotion begins before birth. Basically, what we want to do is we want to promote the positive. Prevention, what we want to do with this strategy are prevent things like chronic disease and chronic stress, allowing children to grow up to be happy, healthy adults. Earlier intervention, when a challenge arises, we want to intervene as soon as possible. And then our policy and systems change work is work that happens at the policy level and at the systems level so that promotion, prevention, and early intervention all work together. Best Starts for Kids has adopted our Equity and Social Justice Initiative. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide. Here we go. We're looking at Best Starts allocation. I'm looking ahead. So 50% of the levy investments are going to the prenatal to 5, which is the investing early. 35% of the BSK investments go to sustain the gain, which is 5 to 24. 5% of the levy investments is for data and valuation, which is really important in showing that what we're doing is actually working. And then 10% of our investment is going toward Healthy Communities, which is our Communities of Opportunity strategy. So BSK recognizes that there are persistent inequities, especially by race and place, and that in many cases, things are getting worse and threatening the collective prosperity of all of the families in our county. We recognize that racial disparities and disproportionality exist due to historical and structural and intentional policy making that has excluded certain members of our community. We recognize that without a conscious effort to change the way things are done, government policies have the impact of perpetuating these inequities. By place, we mean your zip code, where you actually live. What the data shows is that zip code is important, and for example, some communities have a higher life expectancy rate than other communities. all based on your zip code. The community-based parenting and peer support strategy has 3 areas of focus: basic needs, which is an RFP that has already come and gone; Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, which is the RFP that we're talking about today; and general parenting, which will hopefully be released in April. Kaleidoscope Play and Learn and King County are entering into a partnership. Kaleidoscope Play and Learn was created by Child Care Resources, and the county has decided to partner with them to expand Kaleidoscope Play and Learn across our county. We recognize that there are a number of different types of play and learn group models operating in the community, but for the purposes of this RFP, the county has chosen, again, to partner with Child Care Resources to implement the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn model. All grantees awarded funding will be required to sign the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn affiliate agreement, which is located, there's a link for this located in the RFP if you would like to read more about it. I'm not going to cover all the specifics of that, but you can access that through the RFP. But you will be required to sign an affiliate agreement and also agree to work with the Child Care Resources staff. A little bit about Kaleidoscope Play and Learn. The model is to provide weekly facilitated playgroup opportunities. It provides opportunities for parents and caregivers to come together and learn about ways to support, how they can support young children's healthy growth and development. Kaleidoscope Play and Learn also provides referral services and other connections and resources for parents and caregivers who are caring for children from birth to age 5. The Best Starts for Kids initiative has headline indicators and secondary indicators. For this RFP, the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, the headline indicators are aspirational. It's what we hope to achieve. And as you can see on the slide, there are 2 headline indicators. And then the secondary indicators are indicators that actually describe the status of children and young adults in the county, for which we have data. And so for this particular RFP, you can see that we have 4 secondary indicators. The funding priorities for this RFP are to provide funding to organizations who are embedded in communities of color, immigrant and refugee communities, low-income communities, communities with disabilities, and/or limited English-speaking communities. Just a word of note, all of these these 2 funding priorities are consistent across BSK funding opportunities. The second is to provide funding to organizations that partner with other CBOs serving diverse communities. In this case, the partner will be Child Care Resources. All right, so the funds available for this particular RFP are $400,000, and the contract period for the first year, I realize I now have a typo on here, but for this year, the contract period will run from July 1st to December 31st, and then for future years, the contract period will run from January 1st to December 31st. The funding request limits are from $7,500 to $46,500. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to cover the different funding strategies so that the dollar amounts that you see listed here will hopefully make more sense. All right, this is important information that you'll want to know about the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn RFP. Today, we have an information session, which is the webinar. On March 12th, we will have an information session, which will be at the Snoqualmie Library. The second information session will be March 14th, and that will be at the Federal Way Library. And then I'm just going to let you read the rest of the information that provides you with some important dates. The way we decide on who gets funded is applications will be assessed based on the rating criteria. And I've highlighted two particular rating criteria in this particular webinar PowerPoint, although the full rating criteria is listed in the RFP. But today I would just like to highlight that two of the important rating criteria are that the applicant clearly explains how their community or communities would benefit from their agency hosting a Kaleidoscope Play and Learn group. And then the applicant makes the case for their effectiveness as a Kaleidoscope Play and Learn group facilitator. The review is structured in a way that all eligible proposals are scored by a panel of community members, subject matter experts, and King County staff. If you are not awarded funding, you will have 4 days from your notice that you did not get funding to appeal the decision. You should see the RFP for the full appeals process. For this particular RFP, there are some specific budget guidelines. For the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, agencies may submit expenses for the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn facilitator's salary and benefits only. This is a distinction from other RFPs where other things like other staff have been able to be included, other administrative costs have been able to be included, but for this particular RFP, you can only include the Play and Learn facilitator's salary and benefits. You may also include costs for supplies in your budget, which does not include the new affiliate startup funds. So for agencies that have never had Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, as indicated in the RFP, there are startup funds available. All right, and so now I would like to hand it over to my colleague Sarah J. Sanford, who is going to speak with you about the data and evaluation piece.
Thank you, Michelle, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about data and evaluation, starting with some tips for you to consider using if you work through a proposal, as well as what to expect from BSK around evaluation. So I want to start just by introducing these two guiding principles that our data evaluation team has in our work with data and our work with community partners on evaluation, which are partnership, collaboration, and accessibility. So if you're participating in this webinar, you're probably thinking about submitting an RFP, a proposal for this RFP. And data is one way that you can really strengthen your proposal and help the reviewers see what you'll bring into the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn process. Michelle mentioned the ratings criteria that reviewers will be using to look at evaluation or to look at your proposal. So I really recommend taking a look at that, and one place you can start is asking yourself, like, what piece of data would help me tell my story in response to these rating criteria? So you can find data that shows need in your community. You might have your own data that shows your effectiveness at reaching those in need in your community. You might have your own data that shows how your staff and leadership reflect the community. There's a lot of different ways that you might want to consider incorporating data into your proposal, but it's not in and of itself a criteria, and it's not the most important thing. The important thing is to tell your story about why you would be amazing to deliver Kaleidoscope Play and Learn to the community. So with that in mind, we recommend kind of thinking through 3 steps. What's your story that you want to tell? What's the information that will make your story convincing, and then going out and finding that information and data that will help. There's a ton of data out there, and if you start with what you were looking for in mind, it'll be a lot easier to find it. So when we think about what data is, it can actually mean a lot of different things. Numbers are very often what comes into mind most for folks, but it's not the only kind of data that best starts for kids' values. And it's certainly not the only kind of data that'll be compelling to reviewers when they're reading your application. So In addition to numbers, there are maps. Again, I'll show you some of those within King County's data. There are stories. I have an example here of somebody telling a story about a play and learn group and how it impacted her and her child. And then there's pictures as well. So think very creatively about what kind of data will help you tell your story, because it's not always just about the statistics, but it can be qualitative data, including stories and pictures as well. We do just remind you, if you're ever using a client story, always be careful and ask their permission, make sure their story is being told in a way that they're comfortable with, and protect their confidentiality if you choose to include that in your proposal. So again, we value many different types of data, and there's many different places to look for data. There's demographic data, needs data, and your data. Your data might be some of the best place to start thinking about how you can show your effectiveness at reaching the community and your organization's strengths and capacities. But you know your data best, and I want to take a moment to show you a little bit of the data that King County is making available through Best Starts for Kids. And so you're not required to use this data, but and you won't be evaluated preferentially in any way if you do, but I like to take a moment to show it to folks just because it's not always intuitive to navigate, and I'm hoping that if we take a moment poking around there right now, if you do choose to take a look, you'll feel a little bit more confident to do so. So in Best Starts for Kids evaluation, we have what we call indicators, and these are the really big picture population level data that tells us about the whole community and how the whole community is doing on these indicators that we feel are important for child and family well-being. So this is what our indicators page looks like. You can search indicators in the search bar, and let me go ahead and show an example of that. My wonderful colleague is typing for me as I speak. Let's search development, and what indicators will we see if we search under childhood development? All right, so you can see we have quite a few. You might find some that are particularly interest to your community, or that you think Kaleidoscope Play and Learn is particularly relevant for, but I'm just going to pick one to show as an example of what our visualizations of this data look like for you. So let's go ahead and click on that first one, developmental screening for those 9 months to age 5 years. How many kids in King County have had a developmental screening? Obviously each individual visualization will show the data for that indicator, and they all might look a little bit different depending on the data source, but in general, this is what you can expect to see. You'll see a summary tab that has a little bit of text explaining, where does this data come from, what's the question that was asked, and usually on that summary tab, a map. So this is showing us that in King County overall, in 2017, only 21% of kids aged 9 months to 5 years old actually had a developmental screening. So the map shows us that this varies a little bit in different regions. Only 16% of kids in Seattle, for example, whereas 24% of kids in South King County had access. But it's low across the county compared to what we would like to see. So we've taken a look at how this might vary by region, but let's go ahead and click on that demographics tab and take a look at what other disparities or differences we might see in King County. Again, because we're pulling together data from a lot of different sources on these indicators, those specific demographic groups that you see will vary a little bit, but the overall picture will look the same. So here we have a ton. We've got the child's age, child's gender, child's race and ethnicity. We've got more detailed race and ethnicity questions. And then if you scroll down, if you hover over that visualization and scroll down, you'll see we have some different kind of socioeconomic questions like parents' income, what language is the family speaking at home, the parent who took the survey's age, all different kinds of things. So depending on the community that you currently serve or that you would like to serve in this program, you can take a look at different demographic groups, and it might be a good place to look for needs data for your proposal. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the webinar or to the PowerPoint. If you're interested in learning more about the data that we have up, or thinking through in more detail what kind of data you might like to use, we do have a webinar that's linked on the blog where you can spend a whole hour listening to me babble about data, which, again, if you want some extra help, that can be a really good place to start. But keep in mind, it's not about shoehorning data into your proposal. It's about telling your story and using data as a way to really back up what it is that you want to express about your strengths and the community that you're serving. For more information, definitely check out the webinar, and you can also reach out to a technical assistance provider. They can help with a lot of different things, which Michelle will talk about in a few minutes. So that's for your proposal at this point. For organizations that are funded, I want to talk a little bit about evaluation and what you can expect from us around that. Oh, that's just more on the indicators page. So for Best Starts for Kids, all programs are participating in evaluation, including reporting on performance measures. And we'll be collaboratively developing those with our funded partners. So you don't need to worry about submitting an evaluation plan with your proposal. You just need to be prepared and willing to work with us on putting together an evaluation plan if indeed you are funded. You will see on the application process, you have a list where you can check different indicators that you think your program will work towards. So I just want to be really clear that go ahead and choose the ones that you think are most specifically relevant to your program. You're not going to be scored on how many of those you check or anything like that. It's just to help us track what programs are potentially related to what indicators. So go ahead and, it's easy for me to see all of this is interconnected, but you're not going to get a better score if you just check more boxes. So pick the ones that make the most sense to you. It can be in a more limited way. And then finally, where possible, we'll be attempting to coordinate our evaluation data with other existing data collection. We don't want to make any unnecessary burdens for you on collecting and reporting that data to us. So that'll all be figured out, again, as part of a collaborative process with funded partners. So that's what you can expect, but you don't need to worry about including any of this in your proposal at this point. So I'll be around at the end of the webinar. If you have questions and answers or questions that you haven't gotten a chance to ask yet, you can ask them then. And for now, I'm going to hand it back to Michelle.
Okay, so before we get to the funding specifics, I'm going to talk about how to stay connected, some contact information, and a few other things. I think that the funding strategy for this particular RFP may elicit most of the questions, so I'm actually going to save that for the very end. So there are a number of ways that you can stay connected to Best Starts for Kids. You can go to our website. We have a blog, and if you're not subscribed, I would suggest you subscribe to the blog. And then if you're into Twitter, you can tweet us, and someone will respond. It won't be me, but someone else will respond. Okay, so additional resources. There will be 2 more bidders conferences, that says the Shoreline Library. That's not correct. As you can tell, we recycle these PowerPoint presentations. So the real location for the next bidders conference is the King County Library out in Snoqualmie, and you can see the address there. And the second one, it should say Federal Way. I will correct this on the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint will actually be on the website. Is that correct? So that information will be there. You get to looking at these PowerPoints long enough and everything runs together. If you have questions, you can contact, I think I may have the address here wrong. Boy, a number of things. I think, and Chris can correct me, he's online, but I think his web address is capital, all in caps, CP as in Paul, R as in red, E, S as in Sam, hyphen, BSK at kingcounty.gov. So Chris, I promise you I will get this corrected so that no one else will make this mistake. We also have technical assistance, and anyone and everyone is eligible to use the county's technical assistance. Our consultants can help you determine whether you're eligible for the RFP. They can explain the application process. They can edit and proofread your application. They can also help you flesh out your ideas and how to use data to tell your story. So I would encourage everyone to access the county's technical assistance. And as listed here, I'm not going to read them, but these are the TA providers, and you can reach out to them at any time to request technical assistance. Okay, so now we're on to the funding specifics. And as you will note, in the RFP, there are 3 different funding categories: new affiliate, current agency affiliate group expansion, and partial or critical sustainability. The first category that I'm going to talk about today is the new affiliate. So what is a new affiliate? It's an agency who has never ever before hosted a Kaleidoscope Play and Learn group. So this is the first time. As you can see on here, the maximum award for year 1 is $7,500. And what you're agreeing to is to host 16 to 18 weekly Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups before December 31st, 2018. So I'm going to give you an example, and you will actually see me looking off to the side because I have my examples on another screen. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I encourage you to get out your calculators and check my math to make sure that I did this correctly. I didn't profess to be a math major, but I think I got this right. So for example, Michelle's KP&L group gets a BSK award. When I signed the contract, I agreed to host 18 groups for the rest of this year. So the average cost per group is about $416. So if you multiply 416 by 18, you should get $7,500. You will invoice us and you will get paid on a monthly basis. So your average amount is going to be about $416. And I say average because I think there's some cents after that, but that will be determined in the final contract exactly how much your check will be each month. So the second example, I'm using the name Renee, which is my middle name. Is this for the, let me see. I'm trying to think if this is for the new affiliate. Oh no, so this is still for the new affiliate. Okay, so my second example is I get a BSK award, but I'm only able to actually agree to conduct 12 weekly groups for the year of 2018. So when I sign the contract, I will receive approximately $4,992 instead of the full award of $7,500. So if you multiply $416 by 12, you should get $4,992. And again, Renee will receive monthly payments of $416. Okay, are we going on to the next one? Oh, okay, so I see what I've done now here. So for the full year 2019 and 2020, the example is I know that for both of those years, I'm only going to be able to conduct 40 groups. So what the average amount of payment for each group for the full year is about $312. So if you multiply 312 times 40, you should get 12,500. So if the math is not correct, let me know at the end of the question and answer session. So basically, what the way that this funding strategy works is to take what the maximum amount is, divide it by 18, or divide it by 48. So in the case of 15,000, you divide it by 48, and you get about what each group's reimbursement rate is. And that's either 416 or 312. 416 for the rest of this year and 312 for the full year 2019 and 2020. Okay, now we're going to go on to the affiliate expansion. What this is, for example, if you are currently hosting a KP&L group, Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, and you want to host, let's say, 2 more, that would be considered an affiliate expansion. For this particular RFP, an agency will only be eligible to be funded for a total of 3 groups. So for example, in the year 2018, if you decide that you're going to have 3 groups, your maximum award is $22,500. And basically what that is the 416 times 18 should give you $22,500. And then the maximum award for the full year 2019 and 2020 for 3 groups is $39,000. So let me look at my example here. So I have Renee's group gets a BSK award, and Renee knows that she will only be able to host 12 groups for the balance of the 2018 year. So 12 weekly groups times 3 groups is 36 weekly groups. And if you multiply 36 times 416, you should get $14,916. Again, like the last example, you will receive monthly payments of $416 for each group. And I'll answer more questions. I know this might get a little bit convoluted, but I just wanted to just highlight that the way we are doing this is what is the average reimbursement for hosting a weekly group, and then that's how we base the funding. Okay, you can advance to the next one. There should be, you should be, oh, is it stuck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hang on, it's stuck.
You can go ahead and read this.
Okay, so for the critical, for some reason, the slide isn't advancing. For the partial funding and critical sustainability, which I'm sure will pop up any minute now, I'm not actually going to give an example, and what I'm going to do is just talk about this particular category in general. So if you're a current affiliate group and you are not funded at an award of $15,000, BSK will award an amount that supplements your current funding. So essentially, there may be a group out there who, let's say, is getting $7,500 for hosting their group. Well, what we've learned from our partners at Child Care Resources is that really the optimal amount of funding is $15,000 for the year. And I'm going to use the yearly example for this. So we would then supplement that particular group for $7,500. And how you get paid is still going to be the same as in the last 2 groups. But what we want to do is we want those groups that are at risk of possibly not being able to continue, we want to provide some supplement so that they can continue to offer the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn group in their community. Then we have the second piece of this, which is critical sustainability, and that's for groups who are currently, they know that by June 30th of this year that they're going to lose all of their funding. I'm not going to give you examples of this particular strategy because it's going to vary by agency, but what I can assure you is that if you are funded in this category, we will work with you to make sure that you get the right amount of funding, up to $15,000. So do not despair. I think that my trying to create a logically sound math example for this particular strategy will only confuse people. So I'm not going to do that. We'll just wait for that one. So now we have about 23 minutes for questions. And my colleague is unmuting you all.
So if you would like to say something, we have unmuted you on our end, but you will still need to go and unmute yourself. You now have the ability to unmute yourself.
And that's Erin, my colleague, whom you cannot see. We're trying to see if anybody's trying to ask a question, and we can't hear them.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question just about why is there such a difference in reimbursement for the 2018 groups versus the 2019-20 groups, the 416 versus 312?
Okay, so let me repeat the question. Why is there a difference between the 416 monthly amount and the 312? The $7,500 is actually more than half of the maximum $15,000, and we just decided to do that for ease sake. But if you take the maximum award, for example, the $15,000, the expectation is that you will conduct at least 48 groups. And if you do the math, that works out to be about $312 per group. So that is why there's difference, because we just decided that even though the $7,500, you're not going to sign a contract for 6 months. It's actually going to be less than 6 months. But we just decided for sake of ease, that we were, for those who would be awarded for the 2018 funding year, that the maximum amount would be $7,500.
Thank you.
Sure. So we have a question. Can we apply for funding in 2 different categories? We're an existing affiliate that would like to start one additional group and request partial funding for an existing group. Yes, you can. Okay, so we have a comment. I tried to speak, but it wasn't working. So I will type my question. I'm assuming you can only apply for one of the categories. What if you fall into 2? Oh, I think I just answered that question. My question is the same as Kelly's. Sorry. Sometimes there's a delay. So I won't answer that question again. Any more questions? I have a quick question about eligible costs. You mentioned that only KP&L facilitators' salary is eligible. Are we able to request funds for supervision of that staff member? Are indirect costs eligible? No, they are not. Neither one of the answer to both of those questions is no. I know the waiting can be awkward, but I'm patient. Just a word in case someone is typing a question. I will be having a phone call with all of the technical assistance providers. And so there may be some more questions that come up when you work with them, and we'll be able to answer those as well. So someone's typing a question. All right, thank you for clarifying that. Will there be learning labs and learning circles for the facilitators? What is the process of becoming a KPL affiliate like? Well, I can't speak to what it's like to become a KP&L affiliate. That question could best be answered by someone from Child Care Resources. It's possible that we might have an answer to that question now that it's been asked in one of our in-person sessions. The other thing I will make sure is to contact Child Care Resources. I actually can see that they're on this particular call, and we'll work to get just some general answers to that, so that the technical assistance providers will also be able to answer that question. And then, no, there's oh, yeah, okay, so I need to go back and answer, will there be learning labs and learning circles for the facilitators? That's actually part of the Child Care Resources Kaleidoscope Play and Learn support. There will be a number of learning opportunities for group facilitators. And then we have another question. Can we apply for funding for a group in 2019 but not 2018? Or do all groups have to start in 2018? Well, that's an interesting question. And my guess is that the answer to that is yes. I just didn't anticipate that someone wouldn't want to apply for funding in 2018, and I don't see why not. But I will, if you send that question to the CPRES question and answer, to the CPRES, what do you call that, email link, I will get you a final answer to that question. Will awardees have to reapply each year? We would like to start one new group this year and another new group in 2019 or 2020. So in terms of a literal reapplication, no. However, your funding for each year is dependent upon your performance of the affiliate agreement and your agreement with Best Starts for Kids. So if you're awarded in 2018 or presumably for the answer to the last question, if it's yes, you can just apply for 2019 and 2020. You won't have to do a literal reapplication. If we don't have to reapply every year, I'm wondering if we could expand the number of groups we offer in subsequent years. So I knew that there would be all kinds of variations. And I'm going to ask you to send that question also to the CPRES email link, so we can capture those and I can get definitive answers. Because what I don't want to do is misspeak in this recorded webinar, which you will be able to hold me to the answer. So I need to work with our staff here to figure out the answer to some of those questions that I think require further thinking. So did I get all of the, I got all the questions. Okay, just covering my bases and making sure that I got the questions answered in the proper order. You can also verbally ask your question. Does the funding cover renting a space for KP&L? Not directly. So as outlined in the budget, the $15,000, when we worked with Child Care Resources, that number included several different things. And so for the purposes of the budget, you may not include rent in your budget. We will not provide an additional amount above the maximum award, depending on what that is for any agency. We won't provide any more to cover rent or other staff salaries or other staff benefits, for example. All right. Well, if we'll stay on one more minute. And if we don't receive any more questions, then we'll sign off. Again, this webinar has been recorded, so you can go back and for your viewing pleasure, listen to it anytime of the day, actually. Someone says, thank you for joining.